It is the railway many of the world's top engineers said could never be built. An 1,100-kilometre route through some of the world's most inhospitable terrain, at an altitude even mountain goats would shun. Through mountains and deep swamps and over impenetrable permafrost where the ground never thaws. But the Chinese had other ideas, and build it they did. It took them 4 years and cost the equivalent of 5.5 billion Australian dollars. But the result is a technological marvel.
Welcome to train T27, the Himalayan Express.
The adventure begins in the ancient Chinese capital Xi'an, where we're welcomed by the emperor himself. Modern-day Xi'an is a bustling, vibrant city, but it's for its amazing history that we come here. The extraordinary terracotta warriors of Emperor Shahang, known as the eighth wonder of the world. This incredible army of some 6,000 life-size figures was discovered by farmers in 1974 as they were digging a well in a field. The warriors were constructed more than 2,000 years ago to protect the emperor in the afterlife. Today they are simply one of the world's greatest tourist sites. And more than 30 years after their discovery, the restoration work still goes on. This section has been left completely untouched, the scientists waiting until preservation techniques improve before they dig. Xi'an is also the boarding point for our great railway journey to the roof of the world.
Next stop, Tibet, yes!
There's a great air of anticipation as the enormous locomotive pulls us out of Xi'an on our unique trip to Tibet. Four-fifths of the track is laid at an altitude of more than 4,000 metres, with a high point of 5,072 metres. An even more powerful locomotive is needed for the climb onto the Himalayan plateau. Designed and built by a Canadian company, the train itself is state-of-the-art and extremely comfortable. Needless to say, the hub of the train is the dining car, where the food is tasty and plentiful. As we climb to high altitude, oxygen-enriched air is pumped through the train. There are also individual supplies for those who may need it. Then it's just a case of watching the world go by. The world's highest lake, Nam Kho, or Heavenly Lake, signals our imminent arrival in Lhasa at the end of this extraordinary rail journey. The mysterious capital of Tibet has a population of just over 500,000. Lhasa literally means place of the gods, and at an altitude of 3,650 metres, it is one of the world's highest cities. The people are colourful and friendly, and the architecture is equally as attractive. Dominating the city's skyline is one of the world's most famous buildings, the Potala Palace, ancient home of the Dalai Lamas. When the present 14th Dalai Lama was forced into exile, the palace was turned into a museum. Its interiors are richly decorated, and high up on the roof, workers sing traditional songs as they labour. Outside, the familiar sight of pilgrims prostrating themselves as they make round-the-clock circuits of the palace. The Potala Palace also provides a magnificent backdrop for a very special travel director's picnic. We also visit the beautiful Summer Palace, from where the Dalai Lama fled into exile following the abortive uprising against Chinese rule in 1959. One of the most fascinating places to visit in Lhasa is the ancient Sera Monastery, where the monks practice a bizarre form of debating. Well, it's certainly one way of getting your point across. We leave Lhasa at the start of our thrilling drive across Tibet. We climb high into the mountains, where the views are spectacular. Notably here, our lunch stop at Yamdruk Lake. We head for Shigatse, Tibet's second city, but the road is not always clear. Sometimes we've no choice but to give way. Next stop, Gyangsi, the 14th century town which has remained almost untouched in its 600 years. It is the traditional seat of the Panchen Lama and an important stop for pilgrims travelling between Lhasa and western Tibet. This is the giant stupa. From the top, there are fantastic views of the surrounding town. A walk down the aptly named Cow Street is like stepping back in time. It's a similar story in the fields, where traditional farming methods are still practiced. We are now in one of the most remote places on Earth. The landscape has a moon-like feel. There are few motor vehicles here. The modes of transport are purely traditional. The entrance to Mount Everest National Park, where the hundreds of Buddhist prayer flags are testimony to the many pilgrims who've passed this way before. The altitude seems to have a curious effect on some visitors. The Himalayan mountains now appear in all their glory, and soon we get our first view of the highest point on Earth, Everest, or to the locals Chomolungma, goddess mother of the universe. From any angle, the world's highest peak is an awesome sight. Rongbuk Monastery, the highest in the world. And finally Base Camp, 5,300 metres above sea level. From this point, Mallory and Irvine set out on their ill-fated 1924 expedition. The view of the Great Mountain from here is simply incomparable. We're now heading away from Everest as we descend to the Nepalese border, and the landscape changes dramatically. Waterfalls cascade onto the road, giving us a much-needed car wash. The Tibetan border town Jangmu, an intriguing place built into the sides of a deep ravine. We cross the border on foot by way of the famous Friendship Bridge. Then we're in Nepal, and it's a beautiful drive to the capital, Kathmandu. The exciting capital of Nepal lies in the fertile Kathmandu Valley. Though relatively small in size, the valley contains no fewer than 7 UNESCO World Heritage Sites. As with all the hotels we use on this tour, the Kathmandu Radisson is the best in town, with great facilities and a superb central location. For a few rupees, the famous Sadhu priests are always happy to pose for photographs, as are many of the other delightful people who inhabit this great city. Kathmandu is also a mecca for shoppers, the narrow streets crammed with stalls selling all manner of goods. The flight from Kathmandu to Bhutan is recognised as one of the world's most scenic. Shortly after takeoff, the plane charts a course parallel to the Himalayan mountain chain. The views are breathtaking, to say the least. Bhutan, one of the world's most beautiful but least visited countries. The size of Switzerland and with a similar topography, the so-called Kingdom of the Thunder Dragon is both fiercely independent and wonderfully peaceful. This is Thimphu, unlike any other capital city in the world. Small, secluded, without traffic jams, without traffic lights even. No fast food restaurants, in many ways a modern-day Shangri-La. Our drive in Bhutan takes us through dense forests to the beautiful Punakha Valley. The country's architecture has a charming alpine feel to it. The most impressive buildings are these, the famous ancient zongs. Every district has a zong, which roughly translated means fortress. They serve as the religious, military, administrative and social centres for the region. This is arguably the greatest of them all, the Punakha Dzong, run by a thriving community of monks. Bhutan's industry is still remarkably primitive. This is a paper factory where ancient methods are still used. And it's a similar story out in the fields. This odd creature is a takin, a strange cross between a cow and a goat, and the national animal of Bhutan. The highlight of any tour to Bhutan is a trip to the Tatsang Monastery, the legendary Tiger's Nest. This is the holiest place in Bhutan, and everyone makes the pilgrimage at some time in their life. And it's not only humans who make the effort. This is the easy way to make the ascent. Perched almost impossibly on a high ledge, the monastery dates back to the 7th century, when it's said a Buddhist guru landed here on the back of a tiger. It's a fitting way to bring to an end this extraordinary adventure.